Kobi Karp is probably one of the most prominent architects within Miami today.
We built Miami Beach. We are doing the same thing in Coconut Grove. Our projects grew as Miami was growing.
The environment will survive. The question is, will we survive the environment?
If you take care of your neighborhood, if you take care of the buildings, they will take care of you. If you do not, you'll have another Champlain. I think we'll build where we have existing infrastructure, airports, public transportation. And we will continue to build within those spaces.
Can we sustain that moving forward over the next 10, 20, 30 years? Do you see us being the replacement for so many other big cities out there, the example of how to do it right? Welcome back to another episode of the Better Decisions podcast. I am delighted to be here today with Kobi Karp. Kobi Karp is probably one of the most prominent architects or architectural firms within Miami today. We're going to get into, a little bit about who you are and, the business of what you're operating right now. But what I really want to get into, what I really want to look into is the future of Miami, the future of the city, the future of cities as a whole, maybe even across the planet. Kobi, thank you for coming in today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having us.
So just diving straight in, just to give some context, Kobi Karp, obviously Kobi Karp Architectural Design, big company. You are behind big projects. I mean, obviously homes and condos. And I understand you do things all over the world, not just within Miami.
That is true.
Around.
We've been here in Miami I have been here in Miami since 1988.
Yep.
And we've had the pleasure and the ability to work first in the British West Indies, in the Caribbean, St. Lucia, Grenada, Turks and Caicos, for years, from the late 80s till the early 90s, which was Miami Vice's Scarface days. And as we started to work here in Miami, our projects grew as Miami was growing. And what's interesting is as the economy came to a slowdown in 06, 07, 08, we had some projects in the Middle East, but that economy just grew so much that many of our projects in the Middle East grew.
And then obviously coming back into Miami, because it's funny, we were talking just before we started. I had some time in Dubai. You were showing me your residency for Dubai, which is, again, a really big example of talk about a fast-changing city. I mean, Miami has been changing very, very quickly. Dubai feels like it's just off the charts,
right?
Development. Big developments that you've done here, just to highlight. Plaza del Sol, the Four Seasons Surfside. I mean, you've done big projects. There's a lot of big homes you've done. There's a house on Lagore Circle that you've built and designed. You really are at the forefront. I think when people say, okay, architecture in Miami, your name is usually the one that comes up first. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now. I mean, what is your business focused on within Miami right now? What are you developing?
Right now in Miami,
yes,
we are focused on a number of quite interesting projects. And what I mean by interesting is, for example, we are doing the Ritz residences in Miami Beach. So it's two historic hotels, the Ritz Hotel on Lincoln Road on the beach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, well.
And next door is a Sagamore. So the family and the families the Lowensteins, the Conovos, the Ben Joseph, they all got together and they assembled these collection of historic buildings. And we took this collection of buildings to the city of Miami Beach, and we received permission to build a new sculptural building on the ocean, meaning very close to the ocean. Not a big building. It's quite small in size and in scale. And it's a project which is currently being sold as condominiums as a mixed-use project and complement to historic buildings such as the Ritz, right, which has continuously been a hotel. What is interesting is that the community wants more of a residential component there, meaning in the city of Miami Beach, the management, the commissioners, the neighbors have always had some residences, but now they want more residential feeling to make it feel, yes, we have hotels and we have hospitality, but it is not only that. We have residences, we have retail, we have commercial, we have schools, and we have churches. But now, by bringing certain residences to that location, it creates a vibe, it creates an environment that brings it to a different level of community. I've been living in Miami Beach since 1988. Now, people who want to live in Miami Beach can live at the Ritz. They can live at the Raleigh. We did the same thing at the Raleigh with Michael Chevaux. We assembled a collection of historic buildings. We put them all together with a new component, which happens to be, again, a luxury Rosewood residential building. And we're doing the same thing at the Shore Club.
You did that. I know you did that in the Four Seasons, and that was very successful.
Yes, we did.
How challenging is it when you have old buildings, old designs in an old period when the environment was different, both physiologically and environmentally? And we'll get into the whole environment conversation in a minute. How challenging is that? Because needs and wants changes, the environment changes. Is this smashing a square peg through a round hole, or is it easier than one might think?
That's a good question, because what you need to do, what you really want to do, is find the positive in every issue that you have. If buildings are historic, some people see that as a negative. I see that as an asset. I see it as a potential opportunity to create a mean and a method and a story as an architect to create a value. These buildings, which are historic in Miami Beach, were built about 100 years ago, with salt in their concrete and corrosion in their steel. It is upon us now to take these buildings and repair them and restore them and rebuild them and build upon them, like the Surf Club that you mentioned, right? The Surf Club we designed in 2012. That's 12 years ago. And 13 years ago, it's 25. And that, what happens is that when we did that, we said, we're going to restore the original structure was built in 1929. And when we did that, it allowed us to become, from a business standpoint, to become the prelude to the hotel and the residences. And people always said, Kobi, it's not going to be successful. Surfside is not a good town. It's a very bad location. It is not Miami Beach, and it's certainly not Bell Harbor. Guess what? They were not correct.
Yeah, not only were they not correct, it is the highest dollar per square foot currently of any condo in the whole of South Florida. If you go out and look at the dollar per square foot, we've seen sales well over $6,000 a square foot, $6,500, even $7,000 a square foot for some of the resales at the Four Seasons. And that project just seems to keep growing. They keep adding wings to this project.
Yes, we did this. Look, the Surf Club was designed in 1929, yet we did the design immediately to the north. The Seaway was there before. You can look at the historical photos. So we preserved and restored the Seaway with its big arch looking towards the ocean as the prelude entrance to the new residences. So people who come and reside are not only living in a new building, but they're living on the history. It's nice to meet you. Hi, how are you? Where are you from? Who are your parents? Where'd you grow up? People want to know the history. They want to know the philosophy. They want to read the books. People want to know the history. That's why social media, people are so attached to it. Yeah. They can get a lot of information quickly. When I grew up, it was Encyclopedia Britannica. Today, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And that is the story that we're able to tell from an architectural standpoint and create a unique architectural solution that most people do not carry. We did it on a Caribbean condominium in Miami Beach on 3737, and that became the prelude to Island Faena in his district. We did it in Surfside with the Surf Club, and then allowed us to build the Seaway. And now we're working on the Surf House to the south next to Arte, which we also we did. Those are the kind of thoughts that can create a DNA of a community, because that's where the future is going. It's going into building and rebuilding the village and the community within the municipality itself.
So the legacies of Miami, the history, if I'm hearing you correctly, as we go back and we appreciate where we've been and we understand and want to know the stories of our pasts as we look into the future. A lot of, as you put it, and the Sagamore, interestingly enough, was where I met my wife. Really? At the Sagamore Hotel, at the bar at the Sagamore Hotel, and obviously very established, location on Miami Beach and very well known and very well respected. And obviously, as you mentioned now, they're building these residences. And you said it's a move from the hotels. Miami being this touristic city that was always about hotels and coming down for a short time and enjoying yourself. Now it's changed. The variables have changed. The life has changed down here. And these residencies, obviously, is where people want to live all year round, not just for a month or two. This seems to obviously be continuing. With the move forward, actually, before I get into that, engineering, the environmental engineering, because I think the backstory to where we move into the future should be touched on with your history. Your first degree was in environmental engineering. Your second degree was in architecture.
Correct.
Explain the value of that as you see it, because I think that's going to help set a story for the future.
So what happened is at the University of Minnesota Institute of Technology, there you can study chemical engineering, aero engineering, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. And you can study environmental design, and you can study architecture. And specifically, my first diploma is environmental design. And that helped me to venture out and look at urban planning and or interior and or architectural design from an environmental eye. Environmental means from a landscaping, from a sunlight orientation. It means the moon orientation at night. It means how does it affect the existing built environment, urban, and how does it affect the natural environment? So you go through this multiple ways to look at how design is created, right? And you can look at our inspiration to preserve a building like the Roy France building on the Cadillac Hotel, and or to look at how it is that we want to preserve Albert Annis building collection that we do at the Raleigh, and how that creates a prelude for an architectural discussion on preservation restoration with the new construction. And it also makes you see the new construction, how it is built within and relates to the existing built environment, historic or not. And so when you look at some of our projects that have been successful in the past, you mentioned Palazzo del Sol and Palazzo della Luna.
Yeah.
Those are inspired by the Vanderbilt mansion that was built 100 years ago on Fisher Island. And it takes the colloquial architecture and the materiality and the layouts and the spaces that are in this great villa that everybody loves, overlooking the marina, overlooking where the seaplane is. So when we designed Palazzo del Sol and Luna, people said, "Oh, Kobi, wouldn't you rather be on the beach? We can sell for more money, or overlooking the Magic City skyline." I said, no. Being on the major thoroughway of the water, seeing the ships come in and out, seeing the beautiful sunrise from the east to the west along the south, along the golf course, and highlighting the Miami Beach skyline, became something that people did not realize. And that comes from environmental understanding and sustainability of what a community is about. And seeing things kind of like in a reverse and upside down. And that I believe, came from studying environmental design, and the thought process through it is completely different. And that is why I think that we were able to design Palazzo del Sol, not only design it, but make it more youthful, more
It's
useful.
a beautiful project, by the way. I mean, congrats. It's a beautiful project, and it doesn't jar with the environment around. One of the things that we notice, especially when we look at designs of new cities as it comes up, you'll see a new building coming into the sky. And I don't want to say it dominates the skyline, but there are buildings that you look at and you go, you could argue they're either iconic or they're what people would call an eyesore. It's just such a strong footprint on the environment that people I can't focus on anything but that.
Yes.
It doesn't blend into the environment. This seems to do so really seamlessly. The environment, hostile environments, the environment being a hostile rather than something that's, beautiful. It's lovely when it's nice and it's working for us. But what about when the environment is not working for us? We've seen right now, we've seen wildfires in California. We've seen hurricanes on the West Coast. Do you see anything really changing in the environment as you study and you look at it for building? Or is this just something that has naturally existed for a very long time and we're now just becoming a little bit more aware of it?
Look, the environment always evolutionizes. The environment always wants to protect itself. The environment always has winds, rains, hurricanes, fires, snowstorms, all kinds of different behaviors. Some of them, we call them the 100-year storm, right? We have floods that are the 100-year floods or the 50-year floods. What is interesting is the environment, if you understand the environment, right? It's like a hurricane comes, great. That's a force of wind that is lateral pushing you at 150 to 200 miles an hour. Okay, we need to recode our buildings in Miami that now they can withstand hurricanes like we had Hurricane Andrew in 1992.
Yeah.
So the code changed. It took a few years, but the code changed. The code in Florida, in California, will change due to fires. You cannot have stage set wood just built like that and let the fire.
Those Malibu homes were wood framed, and when you look at the before and after pictures, when we flash them up on the screen, looking at those before pictures and after pictures, and what you're looking at the after is what looks like a lot of wood, just charred wood.
Correct. Yet when you look at it historically, when you look at the Spanish architecture, when you look at the monastic architecture, the churches or the government buildings, they were built with block, stucco, cement, clay tile roof, metal roofs. They withstood the fires. They didn't even have sprinkler systems, and they withstood the fires. This is what is important, because sometimes the natural environment comes sweeping through, and it will.
Yeah.
And when you look at historic buildings, good historic buildings, they are designed properly. The surf club was designed elevated and withstood all the previous winds for the past 100 years.
Yeah.
And the waves that come from the ocean, and they desire to go all the way to the bay. To answer your question, the environment will always want to take care of itself, and it is up to me to understand the environment and make the building sustainable and resilient.
Yeah.
And that is what we do. The buildings have to be sustainable and resilient. They have to be designed properly, not only for the wind load, but also for the rainfall.
Yes.
They have to withstand the force of the wave that will come.
Yeah, the wind is not just that wind coming in. It builds up that wall of water that pushes up, and then it just forces it straight into the city.
Correct.
As we have more concrete, as we have more city, as more buildings go up, you notice that when there is pictures of a storm, a hurricane, the most noticeable areas that get documented where there's water in the streets is those highly urbanized quadrants of the city.
Correct.
Not out towards Ponce Davis, Coral Gables, but more into like Brickell, for example.
Correct.
The environment will survive. The question is, will we survive the environment as human beings as we go through these changes? But if I'm hearing you right, I mean, I look at what we had. I'm from the UK, from London, and there are buildings there that have lasted over 1,000 years. We've got the pyramids. I think they just rebuilt Notre Dame. It just reopened during the summer, and said they've revitalized it. So we have the tools. In fact, obviously, we clearly have tools better than we did 1,000 years ago.
Yes, we do.
So it's really just about whether we decide to build a more substantial structure than something that is cheap and flimsy.
Arguably, you're 100% correct. Not arguably, you are 100% correct. And that what will happen now in California. They're going to look. And by the way, fire has happened in multiple cities, domestic and international, which changed the way we build. We used to build cities with wood. They burnt. And that's why we started to build them with brick and block. And that's why we have firewalls in between. And that is the system that we have used. And that's why, like you said, London fire, right? The buildings today are substantially more protected.
Yes.
And obviously it helps to have water in the fire hydrants.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the building code will change in California. It must. It's not optional. People are not going to rebuild with 2x4 state set structures like they have in the past.
Well, it strikes me that the environment, when it's not being looked after, will clean out the rubbish and the good stuff will remain. I mean, the fire of London.
Yeah.
There are buildings that remain because they survived the fire. There was a lot of stuff that didn't because it just wasn't built to last.
100%.
So looking to the future.
Yes, David.
The environment. Looking into the future, because this is really what we want to focus on here. Who are you building for right now? Because, of course, Miami is the recipient of, we're going to start there, so many wealthy millionaires, billionaires coming through to the city. Who are you building for right now? What's the target?
The high profile that you see, the millionaire, billionaire, that is one group. But the majority of the population that we build for, meaning the mixed use, multifamily, residential, workforce housing, that we have been lucky to be involved with and build for over the past decades, years, is really the majority, the bread and butter of our community. And I'll give you an example. Many people come to projects that we have designed, and I'll give you one specific example. Everybody knows Overtown now because Overtown is the cool place to be. It's the next area.
Which used to be like a demilitarized zone. You just wouldn't go there. It's unbelievable to see all these parts of the cities.
Well, that's urban planning, right? That's urban fabric. Any city has areas that become weak or derelict, and then people come in and they buy and they rebuild. I came to Miami Beach in 1988, and people where I came from said I would never go south of the Broward County line, Kobi. And it was when, Cuban refugees and criminals would come across by boat. But you know what? It was the best place to go. It was the best place to be. And really what happened is we rebuilt Miami Beach. We are doing the same thing in Coconut Grove. Arguably, we are building up the city of Aventura. Arguably, we are going to be rebuilding the core of the city of Hallandale Beach, Hollywood. Look at Fort Lauderdale. Just in Fort Lauderdale, the examples of projects that we are doing are rebuilding within the existing city infrastructure. We're not going out. We're staying in areas where there's already city blocks with city lights and city streets with public transportation. And the public transportation that we used to have 100 years ago was phenomenal. It was trolleys. Yet, regretfully, we threw them all away in the garbage. And we put in buses, which now we have changed the buses. We have made them electric buses. We've made them with a gas, so they become more green, more sustainable. But in reality, we're going back to public transportation more the way it is in other cities and in other countries, which will have jitneys, and it will have smaller vehicles to carry a few people to where it is that they need to go at that point in time. The public transportation here in Miami will grow. Yet at the same time, people desiring to travel, to live in Aventura and to drive to downtown Miami may not happen so much, because if I live in Aventura, I will have my town center and my town square and my schools, and I will have my offices there so I can work and live and thrive in my local community. So I will be living within the village itself of a 1 or 2 mile radius, if you will, of where I live. The same thing in Coconut Grove. Same thing in like where we are right now.
Coconut Grove is a pretty evolved, what feels like now a more evolved market. Coral Gables is an evolved market. Ponce Davis is an evolved market. It's out in Miami. There are pockets which probably traditionally, and we were talking about this earlier off camera, that everyone always imagines the big city, the mega city, the emerald city. They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But you were saying to me, actually, no, it's just new pockets will start to evolve and develop. Underdeveloped areas will become more developed. What are the areas, and I want to break it into two sections. What are the luxury markets that you see evolving right now? Because I'm a luxury real estate residential broker, so I have my own personal curiosity. What are the neighborhoods that you see really like popping up and saying, wow, like you said, when Surfside was like, no one's going to do anything in Surfside. That's just a little village. No one's going to go there. And now look at it. What are the ones that 10 years from now, you'll say, remember when no one was going there and it wasn't super luxurious? And now look at it.
I'm not going to tell you, David. It's a
you're not.
Look, you're a smart guy. And the people who watch this are inclined to see where the future is. That's what you and I are having this discussion. This discussion is about what the future holds for us and how can we find our way, right? So Coconut Grove, like you mentioned, became a better, bigger, stronger, more infill neighborhood.
Yeah. Driven by primary necessity.
Absolutely.
Which is where the strength lies. I had this conversation with David Martin, I wanted to inject on this. And he said it's about primary living. And when you mentioned, and it triggered me, when you mentioned about the beach and saying residents, the need for a primary residential environment is ever increasing within our city because of migration.
Correct.
And the more we see those primary residents being satisfied, the better the area does.
100% correct. And the same thing happened to us, like you said, in Surfside. Or even within an island, a luxury like Fisher Island.
Yeah.
Look, for example, I'm just giving you in Edgewater. My office moved into Edgewater, and that area, residential infill, has continued to grow, will continue to grow. The next area is just an area that you can drive by, and on a Sunday morning or a Saturday morning, it's nice and quiet, and there's nobody there. And that's when I came to Biscayne Boulevard. There was nobody there on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning. Same thing happens on Hallandale Beach. Same thing happens on Hollywood Beach, Pompano Beach. No, it's starting with some old luxury projects.
You can see it, Pompano Beach has developed with the Rosewood, the Ritz-Carlton. There's a number of projects up there.
Those are small, petite, little projects in the overall urban infill macrocosm that we have as a community. The quantity of people that move here on an annual basis. I'm not originally from here. I might have been here now for a few decades.
Likewise.
You're not.
Of course.
Nobody is.
Yeah.
Even if Kirsten is from here now, I'm sure her parents are not.
Yeah.
And therefore, by definition, I do not live in a new structure. You may not even live in most people who live in Florida right now, I've never had the luxury of living in a new structure. What happens here is most people come into recycled structures, recycled neighborhoods, and improve them. And we do make them our residences, but most important, we make them our homes. And the quantity of people who move to Florida, it's a public record on an annual basis, and the quantity of widgets, of units, of condos that we can deliver on an annual basis do not match. That's why we have a shortfall.
Yeah.
That's why when you go to Overtown and you come out of Red Rooster and you see the Lyric Plaza residences that we did across the street, and I'm standing outside and people say, oh, this is such a nice place, I'd like to live here. They can't. It's affordable workforce housing subsidized by the state.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a whole block and it's full. And what happens is that we have places to build on the neighboring blocks. And we are trying to build home development, private or PPP. But at the end of the day, we cannot deliver enough residential, single family, multifamily for the community to live in.
Yeah.
So we have the shortfall.
You've said that. You're the fourth person to say that. I've had this on the podcast. I've had Eli Braha, who runs the Hollow School of Real Estate. I've had, Anna Bozovic, who runs Anna's Analytics, who said there's a shortfall. I've had journalists from The Real Deal notified that they've been doing studies and saying there's a shortfall. I've had Craig Studnicki, ISG related, recognizing in his research there's a shortfall. Everywhere we turn, every data analysis that comes out says there's a shortfall of housing that exists not just within South Florida and Miami, actually currently exists within the US. There's a shortfall of the US. So obviously, as these cities grow, and this is what we're discussing, the cities growing out into pockets, and then there's the vertical conversation as we go up. Do you see, I mean, look, with these landscapes as we're building, engineering-wise, actually, before I get into that, I want to go into the pushing the boundaries of what is possible, because as we move into the future, what can we do today? What are we going to do in the future from now that we couldn't do 20 years ago? You talk about old buildings that were built hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago even, and they're still standing today. But what can we do now? What materials do we have? What engineering capacities do we have? What tools do we have, like AI, do we have today that we didn't have 20 years ago, and what can we do with it?
So the technology we have today, and I'll give you a specific example. Me as an architect, I started drawing with pencils, right? I draw old school. And then when the computers came out, I saw that the technology of the computer coming into the office, into the architectural office, before it was AutoCAD even, and now it's Revit, and now it's moving into AI, Revit 3D. What happens is that the individual architect can produce more, quicker, faster with the proper technology. So if you ever come to my office and you'll see X amount of people working, and it's really they're working as a team on intellectual property that is now AI, and it is helping them to accelerate and produce more. So we as an office can produce more than ever before. And at the same time, we can produce more in construction than ever before. Yet, we cannot saturate and provide enough in today's technology as to what the market demand is in Florida specifically. So, we have to fix up the existing building product. We have to fix up the existing condominiums to put hurricane impact doors and windows, change the air conditioning units and make them more efficient. Fix the concrete and fix the stucco so that we can have stronger and better existing building product. Most cities have a lot of existing building product that if it is not maintained, the neighborhood will go to crap. You can look at Detroit. You can look at Harlem. I can give you plenty of examples. You can look at South Beach in the 80s. If you take care of your neighborhood, if you take care of the buildings, they will take care of you. If you do not, you'll have another Champlain. You spoke about the church in Paris. What's the name?
Notre Dame.
Thank you. And you can watch me on CNN talking about why it is that the roof burnt. The roof was made of huge timbers. They were quite old. Quite old. They were hundreds of years old. They were kiln dried like you buy for your fireplace. All we had to do was put a fire protection in there, a fire alarm, fire sprinkler. Imagine if we would have done it within the trusses. It's hidden. It's invisible. A few individual French guys came in to fix the roof, put a new roof on, and the roof is a very good roof on it. It was a metal tin roof, lead. And somebody smoked a cigarette, somebody threw the cigarette, and that's how it caught on fire. And it burned like a fireplace. And now we fix it, we put it back the way it was. But I'm sure that now that fire will not come again because we have a fire alarm, we have a fire system, and we have irrigation in there. Fire sprinklers. This is what we need to do. We need to take care of our buildings like we take care of our bodies. And that's what's going to make it sustainable and resilient. That's why some churches that have the money over years and thousands of years to support themselves, they're still alive. And some churches that don't have the money, they will fall apart. And that's what we have examples throughout the world. Now here in Miami, in Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, look at West Palm Beach.
Yeah.
We are rebuilding West Palm Beach. We have the infrastructure. We have the water. We have the sewer.
That's huge development right now. I mean, I'm getting inundated with people asking me about West Palm Beach right now.
That is good and that is healthy. That is the growth of the community, the next generation of where your kids will go, where my kids will go. But you can see, when I came to Florida in the late 80s, people were moving out of Florida. They weren't moving into Florida. The people who were moving into Florida were a bunch of people who came by boat with no money, or people like me who were basically with no money, who came with an education and a dream. This is what makes Florida special and unique. Back in the 80s, I would drive along Ocean Drive or Collins Avenue. The sun would set to the west, and you can see how it highlights all the beautiful pastel color deco.
So do you see us wanting to preserve, obviously there are buildings that we want to preserve because they have historical context, and something like Notre Dame was, of course, such an important, historical building. It's a piece of our history. You're not going to let that go. But then there are buildings which, quite frankly, you might say, no, they need to go.
Correct.
They're beyond the state of repair.
And
they
you
have
can
to come
build
down.
bigger and better, or better and modified, or better in its place, yes.
And so as we go through and we look forward as what you're designing to build and put in place for the future of the city, how different do you think it's going to look as we move forward? How do you expect it to look? Like, I'm trying to imagine a vision in your mind. We were talking earlier about our kids. My kids are younger than yours. Yours are in the 20s. Mine are like entering the teenage years. 30 years from now, when your kids are your age, and my kids are probably a little younger than me, but close to my age, how do you imagine the city? How do you want it? How do you want it to look?
I'll tell you how I want it, and I think that's how it also will be, which is it's going to be a city which is in infill growth within the existing infrastructure. I do not think that we will continue to expand horizontally and laterally, take over more land. I think we'll build where we have existing infrastructure, airports, public transportation, and we will continue to build within those spaces. We will build new buildings in areas where currently they're just completely open, wide spaces. I'll give you a couple of examples, if I may.
Yeah, please.
Biscayne Boulevard, and it's so great, and it's connecting downtown Miami with Coconut Grove. And look, Kobi, I can drive it all the way up to Hallandale and Hallandale Beach. I can drive it all the way through Dania to Fort Lauderdale Airport. And then I can take L1A and continue to go straight. That kind of north-south movement, imagine it also on the west side of 95, where 441 is, 7.
Okay.
And take it with public transportation and the potential for growth along that artery. It's an artery to your neck that connects your body, that connects downtown Miami with downtown Fort Lauderdale, with Opalaka, with Miami Gardens, and that kind of conduit is where it's going to continue to grow.
So you see a large, as I'm trying to fill in this picture, I've got this image in my mind of the city. So you're seeing the same amount of development that we see east of US 1 right now, which is obviously like almost like that main luxury corridor that runs up. And everything to the west is kind of, I would say it's forgotten, but it's not getting as much love right now.
True.
You're seeing a lot more of the development happening to the west.
True.
As you bring up more arteries into the system.
True.
To flow more information, traffic.
Yes.
Everything.
Yes. And you can see it in places such as Boca or Palm Beach and West Palm Beach. And then you can go down a little bit further south. What happened here is that we had certain growth and then it pulled back. And now the growth is coming back. And aside of that, look at the urban infill like downtown Miami. Look at Flagler.
Yeah.
Look at the Omni District. Look what's happening there and the quantity of people. Look at Edgewater and how many people are coming in.
Yeah.
And are
Edgewater is an interesting one because when you look,
Wynwood.
Yeah, that I was thinking Wynwood, that area which, you go over there now on a Saturday or a Sunday and it's absolutely buzzing.
So
some of the coolest restaurants, galleries.
I just gave you a few examples of when people who are listening to this can say, I can go and invest in that location. I can go and buy in this location, whether it's for my restaurant, or maybe it's for my coffee shop, or maybe it's for my school, or maybe it's for my dental office, or maybe it is for my chiropractor office, or maybe it's for my gym. People need all of these services, which makes a community come together. Because what's going to happen more so in the future than ever before, we are not going to be traveling from Fort Lauderdale to work on Lincoln Road. I used to live in Fort Lauderdale, commercial and US 1, and drive each day and every day south of 95 to my office on 925 Lincoln Road. But there was no traffic. Why? Nobody lived here. And I-95 was under construction.
And ironically, we didn't have the same communication channels like Zoom chats and other things that we have today. Our work structure is different. Yeah.
Barely had a beeper.
Yeah. And so when we look at that, I mean, that obviously changing behavior, our work behavior starts to change.
Changing thought process, changing the environment, changing the physical and built environment around you, and changing also the environment of your mentality and your perception of what reality is. People understand what the quality of life now is more so than ever before. And that's why it's going to create a better and healthier lifestyle. The environment, whether you look at historically, environmental, sustainable quality of architectural built villages, Sicily, Italy, south of France, Spain. You live in a little community. You eat organic food. You go back to the source of where we came from. I grew up on sugar puffs in Minnesota.
Yeah, we know what sugar puffs will do to you.
And the milk that was with it, and the plastic bowl that it came in, and everything that surrounds it. The way we perceive our health and wellness now is tied to our future and how we treat ourselves and how we treat our buildings. And I'll take you a step further. The way we are now, I like social media. It's good, but there's going to be a pullback. People are going to put down the social media, and they're going to look into each other's eyes, and they're going to understand that their growth potential is from other individuals that they can talk to, see, feel, and think with on the spot, rather than get one-way information. Yeah. When I was younger, we used to watch TV, and people said, "Oh, Kobi, you're going to watch TV all over your life. You're going to be addicted to it."
Yeah.
Not necessarily true. You can be addicted to this. Many people are. But what happens is you get a point. I got to stop. Because if you do not stop, you're going to miss on your own life. If you do not come out and say, "Oh, look at the beautiful sunrise that you live at that moment." Because you can go walk on the beach each and every day. And the sunrise is different each and every day. You can see the sunset different each and every day. That the relationship with your friends and your family is what makes it. And that's what the community is. And that's why I gave you my example. I used to drive from Fort Lauderdale. No more.
Yeah.
You gave examples of other people like David or yourself. We like to stay local in our community, and that's the way it will be. Now, if we want to have a Zoom, we want to have communication, we have the ability, and we do not need to travel. I don't need to fly to Dubai each and every month. I can talk and have a Zoom. Yet, when I want to make a deal, when I want to talk to you, David, and get my message across to you, like I'm sitting here today.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, and I'm thinking with you, and I'm talking with you, and we're having this dialogue, which is so critical for you, me, and to the people who watch. At the end of the day, it can only happen face to face. It cannot happen any other way. Otherwise, no go. When you come to my office, we have an office. Yes, we need privacy, we need seclusion, we need time by ourselves. But more than anything else, we need to also communicate, see, and talk to other people and look at them eye in the eye and understand what they're thinking, what they mean. That is the only way we can get to each other, historically and currently. Otherwise, it falls apart.
So I'm hearing you loud and clear. So your awareness of mental health is grounded in our ability for our relationships, for us to connect with other human beings. And this is seen in your architecture as you define moving forward. You are clinically aware of the importance of our ability to connect with each other, to be well in ourselves with our environment, to live in harmony with our environment, to be aware of our environment. Because I feel like, as you said, a lot of people are addicted to the phone. They look down and they're not seeing. They've got blinkers on. They're looking on their screen. They're walking around blindfold. You see people crossing the street, holding their phone, looking at their phone, driving, looking at their phone, which is insane. Just living their life through a screen. But then, look outside, blue sky, gorgeous, beautiful place to live. Do you see that part of the change post-pandemic? Like, why did you see Miami? Why, in your mind, did you see Miami come out of the pandemic so strong? Is it an environmental thing? Was it a political thing? Was it a combination of everything? Like, how do you define the Miami phenomenon as a city to have done, out of all the cities in America, to have exploded and done so well, to see that it almost because I was sitting with a friend yesterday from New York. She said, you guys, you're the golden child right now. Florida, Miami, South Florida is the golden child right now in the US for success. What really defines that? And can we sustain that moving forward over the next 10, 20, 30 years? Do you see us being the replacement for so many other big cities out there, the example of how to do it right?
I think that we were lucky during COVID that we did not shut down. That allowed us to be like in nature, like the natural environment. When you're born and the baby elephant comes out of the womb and is on the ground and he's trying to get up, or the baby giraffe, any kind of animal, the zebra. And if you're able to fight and get up and get yourself together and get your bearings and give the opportunity to yourself, to your community, then you will succeed. I'll give you the thought process on COVID. If we had to shut down, you shut down everything. You shut down physical, emotional, mental. Yeah. You're a salesperson. Continuously and repeatedly, my product sells for the highest price per foot. Fisher Island, I sell for the highest price per square foot, arguably not in the best location. Surfside, I sold for the highest price per foot in a weak location. Bell Harbor didn't sell for the price that I'm selling in Surfside. Why? Because the floor plans, the way they're designed, inside and out, psychologically, emotionally, and mentally, they are the best product. Not because we have a rule that nobody else can do, other people can do. But when you buy a design of a house that we do, when you come in the kitchen and you have your espresso and you turn around from your espresso machine and you're looking over the open kitchen, over the open seating area, family room, and you're looking through the glass, and the glass doesn't have to be wall to wall. It can be a frame. That is what you want, the good quality of life, an orientation to sunrise to sunset, the simple things that make life better. The bedroom, not too big. The closet, not too small. The bathroom, not crazy, but have the right body parts. You and me, you're younger than me, and you're in better shape than me. You're a professional, a rugby player. Like my son was a lacrosse player. But God willing, our heart, our lungs, our components are all in the same place. They are. Yours, mine, hers, our kids. Hopefully, God willing, you're healthy. On the outside, that's the architecture. Your architecture is different than mine. Her architecture is different than mine. But on the inside, our body parts are the same. That is the design of buildings.
So that's our functional engineering.
Yes.
That's our MEP in operation.
Bingo. Cross ventilation, light and air. No fat. Be trim. Fight. Get up in the morning. Let's go. What is the design like? Yes, it makes me feel alive.
It's fascinating that we're talking in this area and this is what you're focusing on. Because I wanted to ask you, what is your focus? And clearly, if I'm hearing you right, your focus is on the functionality of the space, the interior distribution. Because often we see many buildings in Miami that look very impressive from the outside. And I'm not going to name names, but there's some buildings that you see them on the skyline and you go, wow, that's really like you're setting the stage. You can't miss the damn thing. It's right there. It's a defining moment, whether it's an old building or a new building. But then there's times when you've gone in and you've gone, this just doesn't work. You've got a good master bedroom, then there's one building, it's got a great master bedroom, and then you've got 4 really teeny tiny guest bedrooms.
100% correct.
Doesn't work.
100% correct.
You've got lack of light. You've got, weird flop with too much corridors.
Since I've been,
please help me.
Decades ago, we did projects like Grand Venetian, Miami Beach, Capri at the end of Lincoln Road, Caribbean condominium. I'll just give you 3 examples of buildings that were built 20, 15, 10, more so years ago, and they're still desirable and successful because of the quality of life. For me, the greatest pleasure is to sit in a restaurant. Somebody I was, that was like 10 years ago, was sitting at Joe Allen's in Sunset Harbor. Then they sit there and go, I live at the Grand Venetian and I love it there. They were from someplace in the United States. And they were describing the unit, why they liked the corner. And that is what makes me happy. They didn't know who I was. I got up, I paid my bill and my tip, and I walked out. But the things that you can hear in the community is what makes or breaks your heart. And that is what I do as an architect. I design for the community. I design
functional for real living.
Yes.
For real living. And this is I'm so it's so nice to see this and this conversation, because I think we kind of lost our way a little bit. I felt between 2010 and 2015, we saw a lot of buildings coming out of the ground that were designed for the rental market. 1,000 square foot units, 700 square foot units, 3-bedroom units squeezed into 1,400 square feet with a closet that you can use. You have to live out of a suitcase. And now these buildings are suffering. Economically speaking, financially on the resale market, they're suffering. But the buildings that are doing so well, even if they're old buildings, I think of buildings like Santa Maria in Bristol Towers. I'm thinking of more of the modern buildings that do well. Park Grove. I'm thinking of the Palazzo del Sol della Luna.
Let me help you on
Surfside.
Let me take you to the Overtown, right? When you come out of Red Rooster and you see the Lyric Plaza,
yeah,
the people who live there, they love it there. They don't want to move out. And the people who are standing outside coming out of Red Rooster, they say, I want to live here. And they think it's condos or they think it's multifamily rentals. And it is not. We can create good quality product because you have to remember the Volkswagen is made by the Porsche. It is made by the Bentley. It is the same
big group.
Yes, sir. And so the means and method of construction or design, if it's healthy on the inside, environmental sustainable, healthy psychological, physiological, is what's going to make you a better design. And I'll give you a small example that it has been in existence forever. The Roman aqueduct lets the water flow, and they're still in existence, and they're being used in many countries. The Greeks built their temples. So what happens, you come to Athens and you go, oh, look, the Acropolis on top of the hill. Understand it a little bit deeper. They make you walk around the mountain in a circle before you get to the top of the Acropolis. When you get to the top of the Acropolis, the building is in front of you and you go, wow, Jesus, that is beautiful. Look at those columns. Then you walk in and you see Zeus inside in his glory with the natural light. No air conditioning, no lighting. But the way we brought you up the body into the brain of the building is how we can make or break the deal as architects, as designers, urban planners, landscape architects. That's what we do. And if you can capture that through the environmental design and sustainability and resiliency, you can be a successful individual in what it is that I do on a daily basis.
So this is all very positive, and this is great. And moving forward, this is the vision that we want to have for the future. To tail end this, what keeps you awake at night? What do you worry about out there in the environment that we need to not do? That again, that you look at and go, okay, this could be a problem. Do you have opinions of do we go too tall? Are we 100-foot buildings? Is that 100-story buildings? Is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? What worries you in the future, given the hostility of the environment, but the environment as it sits for us as human beings? Is there anything that is cause for concern that we should be aware of if we're going to have a positive future for us and our kids?
I think that since I received my degree in environmental design, which was in 1984, 1985, the awareness of the civilization, the community of the people, has become greater of their natural environment, both built and natural. And that has made a big difference. It is today where people completely understand what it is that they're getting into. They understand carbon footprints. They understand electricity. They understand cost. And they understand how it is that they become more efficient and more sustainable. I am optimistic about the future. And by the way, I go to sleep at 9, 10 o'clock, max 11, and I sleep, boom. And I wake up in the morning with a clean heart and a clean mind. I'm able to sleep anywhere. On airplanes, I sleep. But the most important thing for us to think about here as a community, as a group, is that we must educate ourselves. And don't believe everything you see on TV or on social media.
That's good to know, because I know there's a lot of that stuff comes in.
The natural environment has gone through dinosaurs and has gone through ice ages, and you can study it and see it. We're just now starting to understand and learn it. And I'm 62, so I've had the pleasure of people telling me about acid rain decades ago and telling me about running out of gas and the world being ice age again.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there's no global warming. I'm saying we have to take everything in context and look at it. Because at the end of the day, the important thing for us to understand is how to live with the environment, because we are part of the environment. We are the environment. We're going to get up. If we're given the opportunity the next day after COVID to get up and go, we're going to be alive. But if we're not given the opportunity and they put us in a little cave, in a little box, we will die in there with the mushrooms. We need to be out and alive in order to fight as a community, as a society, to live another day.
It's interesting that there is, and we had actually a couple of weeks ago, I had a journalist from The Real Deal on, and again, we were talking about, media, there's some responsibility on media. There's also a lot of what I call free information out there. I mean, as we do this YouTube podcast, there's people, everyone has a voice, and some of it is not warranted, and some people literally have no basis for their conversation. They just want to scaremonger. There is clickbait, there's fear. I know that, I've spoken and I've had Patrick Murphy here on the podcast. I've consulted with Chad Moss. I was talking with him over this situation with the sinking building article that we covered. And what was interesting is when we dived into that article, it actually said there's actually nothing to worry about. This is somewhat normal. When the title said unexpected, it's like, actually, it's rather expected. The fear-mongering that goes in. There was a thing that came out on social media a few days ago that said, it was some crazy Nostradamus thing that someone shared with me, and they said, oh, I saw this. It states that in September 2025, on the 4th of September 2025, there's going to be a hurricane that's going to completely destroy Miami. It's going to wipe it out. Level 5 direct hit. And of course, with that comes some AI-generated image of a decimated city, something kind of Armageddon-ish. And there's two views of the future, one extremely positive, one extremely negative. And it makes me wonder, this appealing to the monkey mind, the natural fear instincts within us to see something like that and want to click on it.
Yes.
That when I spoke to Chad and when I spoke to Patrick, and they say, look, we over-engineer our buildings by more than 30%. These buildings are built at such a level that they are designed to withstand these. Yeah. And the code, no doubt, it's changed over the last 30 years. I see that. It's going to keep moving. When you see this stuff, when you see these stories, and I'm sure people ask you and see it in social media, what does it make you think? What do you know as an architect about the realities of what would happen should we get a direct hit?
If we get a direct hit, and we did receive a direct flood into Brickell, and where Brickell and 1101 Brickell is, and those buildings, they are in a low area that is designed to get flooded with boats. I mean, to paddle boats across. That's why when you look at the buildings that are surrounding that area, you walk up a whole floor of stairs just to get to the lobby level. You need to understand that certain things that we have done in the past in this community have been designed accordingly and correctly. And I'll give you a couple of small, minuscule examples. You can drive around and look at Miami International Airport and you say, wow, it's elevated and there's a blue lagoon next to it because we dredged it deep, and it's deep, and we put the soil and we raised it up. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers looked at what it is at the highest and worst case scenario, or flood, or sea level rise coming. Now you can say, those gentlemen 100 years ago, or gentlewomen 100 years ago, miscalculated. You can argue that. But what I've learned over the years and decades, because I like to study history, is that the Greeks were not right, were not wrong. The Romans were not wrong. The aqueducts are still standing. And that's why it is that we need to look at what is the reality, what the fact is. I like to look at the Statue of Liberty. It's a pretty statue. It sits on a beautiful island. And I like to see the sea level change in relationship to the photos of the Statue of Liberty over the past 10 years, 100 years, and when it first arrived and was being installed. And when I look at the photos, high tide and low tide seems to be substantially the same. Now, we need to study where it is. We're sitting in Florida. We're sitting on a sponge. So as sea level rises up and down,
we got a limestone to contend with.
That's it. The tide goes up and down twice a day, every day. And that's why I do not get excited by positive news. I do not get excited by negative news. I need to look at the data and the facts and the information. Once you as an individual have the data and information, hopefully you're smart enough to analyze it.
Yeah.
then you're in a good position. And that's what you should do. That's what this discussion is about.
Yeah, I say it all the time. People need to spend more time actually. And now we have AI evolving at this rate that it's evolving, the ability to analyze, the ability to process data, massive reams of data, massive amounts of data sets will allow us to move forward and understand these things a lot better.
Correct.
But people actually need to actually stop clickbaiting and actually read stuff rather than reading the title. Actually read it. I've been doing research on real estate, residential research on building performance, of neighborhood performance for over a decade, well over a decade, and I always find it interesting that there were decisions being made, people impulsively coming in and buying product, whether it's a home or a condo, new or old, based off nothing more than, hey, this looks really, really nice. You should look at this. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it's interesting that once you start looking at the data, these patterns emerge and they're so obvious, they're so clear that we can really see. And when we put it together, it really makes a lot of sense.
And the patterns that you're referring to are nothing more than the seasons. There's a pattern in the summer, there's a pattern in the winter. Yeah. Follow it, look at it, put this, whatever it is, down, and look at your built and natural environment around you. If you want to understand a community, go drive it on a Saturday or Sunday morning and go have a cafecito. Go pick up and see who's there, who's living there, and who's not. How you can make it better. My mentality is how it is that I can make the environment better, make the community better, what I can give. Because whatever it is that I can give as a designer, as an architect, I can pull back value, which is what my client wants. Yeah. And I can create value where nobody else has thought about. That's historically what I have been lucky and good enough to do over the years and the decades.
You are clearly a man with a very, very strong vision, a clear direction of what you're doing. You've been doing this for a very long time now, so it's great to see someone who has a very positive direction for the city as it's moving forward. I want to thank you for doing this podcast. I want to maybe leave you with one question, which is if you were to look around the world, and you've obviously, you're a very well-traveled guy, you've seen a lot. Is there one place right now that you look at and go, wow, they're doing something really interesting over here?
Yes.
In the cities across the world. Anything that we could look at and say, hey, what would that be?
Yes. I think that, look, for me, I love the United States of America very much. In the United States of America, I think that some of the best places to live is really in the state of Florida. It's a unique state in the lower 48 that's unique. I think that you have an opportunity to, if you have an opportunity to study, to go. You need to go. Now look on social media. You need to go see how construction has expanded and grown in infrastructure and communities in China, in Southeast China, because it relates to Florida in temperature. You need to go to places such as Dubai. I've been going to Dubai since 2004, so it's about 20 years. The evolution and development revolution of that community, not only architecture, not only infrastructure, not only medical and facilities, not only economical, but to see how people actually are behaving and interacting. It's a magnet from a lot of places that have failed and are failing around the world. There's always a place around the world that is shrinking and failing, and there's always a place in the world that is expanding and flowering. You can go to Italy. You can buy old villages and old castles for free.
Yeah.
You can go to France and do the same thing. There's always a recession of a community, and there's always an expansion of a community. In the United States of America, when I used to go to Dubai in 2004 and they asked me where I'm from, I would say Florida. I would not say Miami. They don't know where Miami is. They didn't even know where Florida is. I would just say I'm from the United States of America. I certainly did not say Minneapolis. They didn't even know where Minneapolis was. They know New York. They know Los Angeles. They know places like that. That's what the majority of the people understand. You need to be able to get up, go take a flight. There's direct flights to the Middle East and the Far East each day, every day out of Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, and Miami. Take one. And you will see how the world has expanded and how the world has been modified quickly and quietly. In Europe, a little bit, but in China, Japan is interesting. Mm-hmm. Go look at what it is in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Bahrain. Saudi is going through that expansion right now, desiring to go through that expansion. We have a lot to study from them and a lot to learn from them.
Beautiful. Well, Go get your plane ticket. Go take a flight. Kobi, thank you so much. Hope you guys appreciated this episode of the Better Decisions podcast. I want to thank Kobi Karp for doing this with us. I've learned a lot. I'll continue to have communications with you. I'm watching your projects closely. For more information, see our details below, including Kobi's. Thank you for watching this episode. See you soon for another episode of the Better Decisions podcast. Thank you.